Today, I'm talking to Robin Sheridan of Compass in Seattle, Washington. Robin has been an agent for 7 years. She started her career from being not just a successful litigation attorney prosecuting criminals, but a mother of 2 toddlers. She launched into rapid success, quickly reaching $13 million a year. While she maintained her production several years into the business, she hit some hard times and challenges, including the transition through divorce and becoming a single mom. Since then, she has come out of these challenges, making breakthroughs and doubling her business year over year. Today, we talk about how she does it. Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. This podcast was created for real estate agents across the country to come together, sharing ideas to take your, their, and our business to the next level. All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf podcast where top real estate agents tell how they do it. And today we are so excited to have Robin Sheridan with us with Compass in Seattle, Washington. Robin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited.
Excited to have you. So everybody, we brought Robin on the show because she has been in business for only 7 years. In the last year, you've doubled your business and want to learn. And she's been through, some not so easy times and she's come out of those on top. So we're going to learn a lot about that. Start for us with, how did you get into this business of residential real estate? How did you get crazy enough to do it in the first place?
That's a great question. I never intended to be in real estate. It just had never really occurred to me before. But I was an attorney for many years. And after I left that, and we can talk about that later, but after I left that, I was doing some freelance writing. And I had a baby, and I had someone over to evaluate my house. And when she left, I looked at my then husband and said, I'm going to get my real estate license. And I had it 3 weeks later.
Wow. And I remember when we talked before the interview, we talked about the job you had before. I mean, we talk about this job as 24/7, and people get into it and they don't know what they're getting into, but you truly left a just nonstop, kind of exhausting place before. And I think that kind of, it's like Steve Jobs says, you look back and everything lines you up for what's now. Right. That probably really prepared you, because Robin was a litigation attorney, and for it was criminal defense. Was it?
I was a criminal prosecutor.
Yeah. So you learned a little bit about reading people and a little bit about negotiating. Tell us first, because I want to kind of go forward with your career, and then we'll go back and peel back what you took out of that into your success now. But how did that kind of take us back to, really, how did you know to make that decision, and what did it look like going into it? And then we'll go into what made you successful.
How did I know that I wanted to become a real estate agent?
Yeah.
I think I'd been struggling after I'd left the county here, after I'd stopped practicing law. I actually had taken another job when I left the county for about 3 hours. And I decided after 3 hours that it was just an avenue for me to leave, and I just couldn't do it. And I needed to figure out what I wanted to do next. But at that point, if I recall, I was just getting married and probably going to have a baby sometime soon. So I wasn't quite sure what to do, but I was doing some writing, which really wasn't paying the bills.
Yeah.
But my husband at the time, or maybe he was my fiance, he was gainfully employed, thankfully. But that moment when she left my house after she'd come to evaluate it sort of was this aha moment where I thought, gosh, I could use all of my skills that I've had. I could have this flexible job. Like, this might be life-changing if I'm good at it. So I just thought, well, why not take the test and figure it out?
Wow. So you took the test, you figured it out, and I love how you got your first deal. It was a little bit lucky, but I think there's still something to be said for putting yourself out there. Right. So tell us about how you got your first deal.
I actually got my first deal when I was going to be branding myself. I was meeting someone to look at logos and to just try to identify what my brand would be. And she said at the beginning of the meeting, she said, hey, you know, I just saw a house that I really liked. And I think she'd just come from the open house or something like that. And I pulled it up on my computer immediately. And I'm like, oh, well, this is a colleague of mine who listed this house. And I must have had my license a couple months at that point. And I called her up, and I think we were in contract maybe by the end of that day.
That was nice. That was a good
It was
first
pretty
deal.
great. Yeah, it really was.
So you went from that, and that was you're still married, and you had two babies, or how did that look, kind of getting into the business? And
Yeah, I think I had a toddler when I got my license and started working at the office. But I think within months, I was pregnant with my second kid.
wow,
Yeah.
wow.
That I remember like going on those appointments.
This was all easy. Well, what's that?
I was just thinking back to it this morning. I remember going on appointments. When you go on a listing appointment and you have a belly, you know, people look at you like, you're not going to be able to represent me. Like, what's going to happen?
I remember that. I
Right?
got business anyway, though, but I think I lost some because of that too.
Oh, I know I did. I know I did.
Yeah. But they only known I was negotiating deals like the day of and the day
Right?
after, probably
Of
better than
course.
anybody.
Yeah, I remember having like a teeny baby and like taking phone calls, you know, you would just have to.
Yeah, exactly. So you go, I know a lot about how you got into the business, and I kind of just want to tell everybody, but I want to get it out of you first. So you get into the business, you get your first deal. What do you think your biggest, as you came into business, what did you expect, and what was the difference in what it was really like? And give us some of the ahas in that process.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't really know what I expected. I was coming from such a different environment. I do know that when I was looking at what office to go to, some of them felt like summer camp. And I thought, oh, I can't go from working in a courthouse to this environment where everybody seems to be just like running around with their heads cut off. So I knew I had to find like an environment that seemed like really professional, and I needed some guidance. So I found a good broker who, you know, gave me that guidance that I needed. And like I said, I'm not sure what my expectations were, but it did feel very, very different. And I needed to learn how to, I guess, run a business, because you know, when you're dealing with criminals, they just keep coming.
Yeah.
You never stop. Your business.
So you had to learn a little bit. You had to learn a little bit of business development. So give us, and maybe it's on that same, whether it's in business, was it in business development, or what was your biggest kind of okay, this is how it works, or just aha about this business and how it works?
I think my biggest aha back then, and it was a great thing, was that my ability to be social was going to be my biggest asset. And because my broker would meet me and tell me every week, like, how many people did you have lunch with? How many people did you meet for coffee? Like, who did you see today? And I thought, these are things I do well. I love talking to people. I love talking to strangers. So I think I realized at that point, like, this was going to be at least a good skill set that I already had. But we've talked in the past about other things that I've transferred.
Well, I was about to go there. So you came in, you thought, okay, there's skill sets you have, but you came in realizing this is probably not only going to be a job that fits the lifestyle I need, but that fits what my strengths are.
Right.
And then we'll go backwards a little bit for a minute to being an attorney, because there were two things, you know, that we've talked about that you got out of it. And one was, you really, in that job, you really had to read people, which you do in this. And in that job, there's really a need to not be afraid of confrontation and negotiation. So give us which one you want to visit first, or what we need to add on to that, and give us some stories.
I think I get this question a lot, just from people asking me how my legal background, you know, impacts what I do now. And they always assume that it's the contracts are really easy for me. And of course, I mean, the contracts I can read that language. I speak that language. I went to law school. So that's fine. But what I've really taken out of, at least what I did as an attorney, is the ability to read people quickly and assess them really quickly, and to try to build quick rapport with people. Because I wasn't an attorney that sat down and made contracts all day or just took phone calls. I was in the courtroom really from morning until the afternoon every single day. Like, I was in trial all day. And so I was surrounded by strangers all the time, reading people's faces and just taking notes and really, really getting to know people in a quickly.
Well, I think that's interesting. I'm gonna ask you another question about what you use, but before I do, you know, we're always talking to people in this business, but you were in a role where you were reading people before you spoke to them, so it gave you a chance to learn to read their body language and to learn that skill. Because I think a lot of us, while yes, body language is 60%, a lot of times because of what we might want to believe or perceive, we're not watching that body language that speaks more to the truth than what people's words are. And you were in a job where you kind of did that already. So it transitioned for you in a way that it doesn't for the rest of us. I'm kind of jealous. You and I have talked about the book. What is it? But what everybody is saying about body language, which we've not read, but we're going to. What everybody is saying.
It's on the list.
Yes, it's on the list. And Rokon, who is doing our show notes, is going to find the author for us and link that book out. So we will read it. Or I'm going to Google it right after this. But tell me, a question from that is, you know, we've talked about open houses for you because of your experience building rapport with people and reading body language. You're very successful with open houses. Give us, like, for me, it might be my body language because I'm like, I don't like this. I don't know. That's not always true, by the way, everybody, but sometimes it is. But give us kind of, what do you think it is that makes you, I think you, from every open house you do, you say you bring home, you generate a relationship and usually a client out of.
Yeah.
How
I
is
do.
that?
I try to bring home one person. Well, let's just say I really like strangers. Like, I always tell my friends, I'll be your plus one for your Christmas party.
Oh, wow.
I really like
awesome.
going into that environment. I feel like it really tests me somehow. And so and we talked a little bit. So just to bring it back to the courtroom, so that, because some people probably have never been in a trial, but when you are selecting a jury, as a counsel, you're sitting at a counsel table, but they bring in basically a herd of people from 60 to 100, depending on the length of the trial. So you're surrounded by all these strangers and you get to question them and you get to watch the other attorney question them. So I'm sitting there watching everyone's faces as fast as I can, but also taking notes. Like, I've learned to take notes without actually looking down. You're not allowed to have a computer. So I just really got a sense of like how people were responding, and frankly, if they like me or if they didn't like me. And of course, the people that didn't like me, I wanted them out of there as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's not easy to influence people you don't like.
Exactly. Or if I even got the slightest impression. And of course, everybody, like we talked about before, like, everybody thinks they're a good judge of character, but I just have to go with my gut on things.
Yeah.
So at an open house, as you know, a lot of people walk in the door and they like slink along the back wall because they think we're just scary and we're gonna like be crazy.
Like, whatever they do, like, don't get near the realtor.
Right, like she's got some weird disease. So, but I really try to put people at ease. Like, I'm never salesy. I'm just not interested in being that way, and just have real conversations. And I really, really hone into the people that I like, who seem to like me. And years ago, another agent who's very successful told me that she met her realtor at an open house when her realtor told her, I like you. And so now when I do like someone, I tell them that. I said, I like you. I hope we can work together, you know, if they're not represented, of course.
I mean, that's so simple, but I think everybody gets so focused on just reeling in deals sometimes, or being afraid of it. And it's just people. We're all people.
Yeah. And people like to be liked. They like that feeling.
Exactly. You know? Everybody wants to be liked. I love what you said, hone in on people that you like and that like you. And that's just great business practice from your jury, selecting the jury or the client.
Yeah, it really is true. Like, you have to go with your gut, because if someone we've talked about this, like, someone seems like a problem from the minute one, they will be.
They will be. It's not getting any better.
It's not going to get better.
So you, as an attorney, you also obviously have done a good bit of negotiating before your career, negotiating residential. What are the similarities and differences, and how they have you translated?
I think negotiation, it's always the same, right? Everybody wants to come out happy and everyone wants to compromise. But what I've noticed, especially with newer agents who maybe just have a different background, is they come into every negotiation in a really confrontational manner. And that really puts every person in the room off, or over the phone off. You can just hear it. I actually had just someone this morning over the phone who was very snarky with me, and we've never met. And I thought, oh goodness, you're doing your client such a huge disservice, because you really do, what is it, catch more bees with honey, or whatever the phrase is.
I always forget it too, but I know, we all know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I mean, if someone likes you, they're much more willing to negotiate with you. And, it's a confrontational, posture that we're in, but you certainly can always be kind and still represent your client's best interests.
Well, it's understanding the negotiation is an exploring process, not I don't remember the word, but not a confrontation, not a fight. It's an exploration.
Right.
And think of it that way, you can get a lot further
with
it, which I can tell that's your nature, as you're exploring, from the people coming in the open house to the deal that you're working with, and so forth and so on. Obviously we've talked a lot before, everybody, because I love what you said. I'm going to have to just go ahead and do my plug because I can't resist. Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. Best book ever. Everybody knows I love that book about negotiating. But he talks about your last impression is the lasting impression. And you brought, when we've spoken before, we talked about that and what you learned, and gave us the stories about here's how it works in the courtroom and what you learned in school and how it applies from the listing presentation to the deal. So give us a little bit about that.
I think you had asked me at some point about listing presentations, and I had said that I am always working to improve my listing presentation.
I have one, but I never use it. I mean, I just keep going and having conversations, but that does work.
It does work. And just like right now, our conversations will always take us in different directions. So it is on my business plan for 2020 again, is to work on my listing presentation. But what I would mention was that there's this concept that I did learn in the courtroom, and that is the concept of primacy and recency. And because I was representing the state, I had the burden of proof. So I always was the first to present my case, and I always got a rebuttal at the end. And I love that, because you can just sort of seal it all up at the end, and that's the last thing that someone remembers. So when I really try, if I can, to be the last person who's through the door from if they're interviewing like 10 agents, because some people do that. Or the first person, I prefer to be the last. And I do give them something, because you always bring, a book.
I love what you do. Yeah. I shouldn't even say that, everybody. Just hear her out. Yeah.
I bring them like some information, and use the briefcase technique. Like as you're leaving, you're like, oh, I have some information for you. But then I say before I leave that they're going to have someone give them a higher price than me. I'm sure they will, because people tell you what you want to hear. But ultimately, you're going to have to decide whether you want to go with somebody who's telling you what you want to hear, or someone that, is giving you really the straight deal, and that you ultimately have to like the person that you're going to work with. So there's basically just to say, you're going to hear a lot, and people are kind of going to go blow some smoke. I don't say it that artfully, but that I hope you end up working with somebody that you like, because it's an intimate process and it's an important process. So.
Well, and you just said, I hope you end up working with someone you like. You made it about them, not yourself, even though obviously you're positioning yourself to win the business.
I hope
but you're making it about them, because it is about them, and they need to know you appreciate and respect that.
Right.
It also reminds me of Stephen Shane, which I think we talked about earlier. He's an agent in Aspen, Colorado, and he's just one of the funniest people once you get to know him. He's kind of interesting sense of humor. But one of his big things, because he deals with a lot of really kind of intimidating high net worth people that are buying a second home. So he doesn't always have the time to build that rapport with them that we might in our markets. I know a lot of my clients are in Atlanta. They're just moving within Atlanta. But he says it is a disservice to acquiesce, or to acquiesce is a disservice. That's actually how he says it.
Interesting.
But it's the same thing. Like, you're not there to acquiesce, especially, the more money at stake, the more important it is to shoot them straight.
Right. Back
to your message.
I mean, just imagine giving someone just the price they wanted to hear and having to backpedal later. Like, I haven't actually been in that position, but it would be a pretty awful position to be in. And I don't think you have a repeat client if you did something like that. It's all about the relationship. And I didn't mention anything before that, like, I've had listings that I didn't get, but I still see them out there on the social media referring me out because maybe they chose somebody that they didn't like or didn't do them the service that they wanted or so on, but they're still referring me. So,
and that's that's a huge message. I love that. And I always try to remind people on my team of that, is that, you know, it sounds, some people may sound naive, but it's reality. Learn from reality. But, you know, when you do the right thing, it doesn't take that long for the compound effect of doing the right thing by people to pay. You might lose a listing, or you might, you know, have an uncomfortable conversation. But at the end of the day, it shocked me over time how quickly people remember you, and it pays off. Even though I can remember, like, wow, I didn't even know like doing the right thing was going to pay off. It just did, because it does.
Right.
Which is incredible. So I'm going to repeat something because you skipped. It's back to this topic of this whole listing appointment. Primacy and recency. I just want to repeat that for everybody, because primacy is that concept of the first impression, kind of implant the memory in them because you're first.
Right.
But also that recency, or as Chris Voss says, the last impression, that is the lasting impression. The most recent encounter they have with you is what sits with them, in making sure when you leave that appointment or leave a negotiation or whatever you leave, always leave people feeling, you know, leave them with something to remember, and something positive.
It's really important. I mean, really, even if you do get stuck in the middle of that pack of agents, just to like swing back around as they're hopefully you'll know when they're finishing all of their interviews, and to like send them something, email them, call, and I'll say it later on. I'll mention that I thought of something else that I do, but I'll talk about it.
Oh, no. Tell us now. Tell us now.
Well, I also sometimes will just send someone a video at the end, because if I can't have the last word, at least I can be looking them in the eye with a video. You know, so
like it. Now, do you do that with Bom Bom, or how do you do that?
I use it Bom Bom for that.
So share with us I've got Bom Bom like in my email waiting for me to activate but I'm still trying to decide how to use it and what to do with it. So give us a little about that.
I think it's probably the tool I use more than any other tool. And I use it in several different ways. I use it because I relocate a lot of people from the Bay Area. I grew up in San Francisco, so I tend to relocate people from San Jose, San Francisco to Seattle because of that tech sort of, they're going back and forth. Yeah. So they're located down there, or they're investors or whatever, they're moving up here. And I will tour for them. You know, usually I want them to come here first and we tour together, so I get their impressions of places firsthand. But then once they're gone, I can tour more effectively. I just take a video with Bom Bom, compress it really quickly, and I text it to them. And if it's something they should see right away, I'm like, you need to come up. You need to fly up this weekend and see.
And Bom Bom tells you when they open it.
Yes, it does. If you send it to an email, you can track the analytics on the email, see how many times they opened it.
And you can also create Bom Bom videos. What's that?
I think sometimes you can see that they open it again and again and again. And you're like, this is really odd.
or the Bom Bom videos, you can also send them out to a group. You don't just have to do one for one person.
Yeah, and they have this system where you can do an animated GIF at the beginning of your email. And they say it's a really, really high percentage of greater percentage of opens you get when you have something animated in your email. Like you could do like a little sign, sort of like shift it so that you could even say
it just draws their attention. There's some research, I can't remember, about movement and people's attention, but it really like when something does or doesn't move, there's even like something I saw on like a Netflix. It's relevant, but I can't remember everybody, but there's something about the nature of movement and non-movement of what you don't. I remember what it is, and it's kind of cool, so I'm going to share.
Oh yeah.
It was one of these brainy videos, because I love all that weird stuff. I don't watch like trash TV. I watch weird documentaries on Netflix. What can I say? about how the brain works and whatnot. That's why I would do this podcast. But they talk about, there was this experiment they did, and they would flash a picture to people. Like, I think it was, I can't remember the series of pictures, but the point is, if there was no movement in the picture, they would say there would be something as ridiculous as replacing like the Cookie Monster with a Christmas tree. I mean, something really obnoxious, but if there was no movement, saw the picture and everything stayed in the same place, your eye would not catch that anything in the room changed.
Oh, fascinating.
It was bizarre. But if there was movement, you would know, you could see it. But if you would see different pictures but no movement, you can't catch it.
Right.
I mean, so there's something there, and there was in the message of what movement does and how we perceive things through movement. So it's pretty powerful.
Right. I think so. And using it on social media and so forth, it's all effective to be less static.
And the videos and I'll Google anything by video before I'll read it any day.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, because I want to, even if I read it, like, okay, now I read it, now I'm ready to take the video in, but I want the video one way or another.
It's really helpful. Say that? Yeah. I definitely think it's super helpful to use it just for so many different things. And for the listing, like I said, if I'm in the middle of the pack and I want to make a lasting impression, I could sit in my car and just like put it on my face and say how nice it was to meet them, and just follow up.
And that's like thoughtful, because it's like, oh look, she was thinking about us. Like, even though some people would say that seems,
people really are flattered by it. It's even if I haven't heard from a buyer in months, I'll do that. I'll be like, hey, I was just thinking about you. I saw this place. I've used it when I submitted an offer and I couldn't present in person. So I would do a video of myself talking about my clients. I've used it for that. Or when they didn't answer the phone, and I just would send a video, So anyway, I really like it. But then a lot of people aren't comfortable talking on video, but obviously, well, we are, because we're doing it right now.
You know what? I am on the podcast, but if it's not a podcast, because I've been doing the podcast so long, but if it's just me, I get a little self-conscious. I'm going to have to like warm back up to, maybe when I try it again, I won't be, because I have been doing the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So funny. I mean, now like I've got a whole like new series of 1,000 ideas my team's going to be crazy about.
Give it a shot. I really, really like that tool.
Yeah. When I did it before. Okay. So and Bom Bom, I've just got to do that one way or another. I want to learn, and everybody else does. So you got your license, and I remember, again, as we spoke before, you got it because it was a lifestyle change. It was obviously, even though it's a 24/7 job, there's a flexibility in where you are and when you do what, and there's the financial benefits of it. But, so there was that part of your career. And then there was the moment where you had a complete 180 in your life, and it was from married with kids to the decision to not be married. Of course, the kids fortunately stay. And that kind of didn't help your business grow, but coming out of that, you're doubling your business. Tell us that story.
Yeah, I would like to say that change is invigorating. That's what I'm going with.
Change is invigorating. I like it.
Yeah, I sort of changed everything at the same time. I actually even changed up my brokerage then. Of course, I've changed again because now I'm at Compass, but yeah, I'm staying here for a bit. I think people don't know they're unhappy when they're unhappy sometimes, because you get really complacent about life and you just sort of going through the motions. But it wasn't until, and I'm just going to be really open here, it wasn't until one day when I was driving to this really far off listing that I took. And here, traffic is terrible in Seattle. So, it should take 15 minutes. It's not that far as the crow flies, but I don't know. I was in traffic forever. It was pouring rain. And I was just thinking, I can't do this anymore. And I just, I had this moment in the car. It may have been that same day that I later told him that I needed to end this. And there was no art talking me out of it at that point. I just knew that in order to get this weight off of me, I needed to be free. And not free to I don't know, I wasn't happy.
Yeah, I get it. I've been through it.
Yeah. And it's really awful, because you immediately feel like a failure. And I think that's also a mom thing. I had a toddler and another little kid, 2 little kids, and I just felt awful. And even though I still have business in the mix, and I still continued that listing, and she had multiple offers and they were happy. They were actually going through a divorce, that couple. So I was actually like the intermediary between like people that weren't speaking to each other at the time.
Wow.
Got in there.
Yeah.
I just remember feeling foggy, and I had people in my car, and by the end of the day, like the different people that had been sitting in my seat, because you're touring people all day, like it was sort of starting to just all meld together. I just needed to get through the divorce and just sort of get myself together again mentally, I think. I needed to feel good again in order to get clients again, or at least grow, because I really became stagnant at that point.
Yeah.
My business didn't grow for like 2 years. It was like
you were at, I think it was like 13 million.
Yeah, it was about 13 million for a couple years straight.
And now you're looking at 26, I believe, or 23.
23 million is where I'm closing out this year.
So obviously give us like, what is it that you think got you to the point of being able to do that, to go from 13 to 20? Because before you were stagnant, there was a non-stagnant but just $13 million producer. Then there was a stagnant $13 million producer, which is pretty good because you didn't go down.
Right.
You stayed. And then you doubled.
Yeah.
So what made that? What was the difference?
I knew I had to change some things, because when you're stagnant, you feel stagnant, you feel stuck. And and it was just me, like I need to pay my mortgage. So I was really motivated because I don't want to lose my lovely house and have my kids on the streets. So
yeah,
I knew I needed to make a change. So I actually went to 2 of my girlfriends from high school and they were actually both top producers in the Bay Area at the time, and one has now moved to Dallas, so San Francisco and Dallas. And we made a little accountability group, and they were really instrumental in me sort of getting in the mental game to grow, because they were both doing phenomenally well in their separate markets. And that was a great referral group too, because people are always sort of moving up and down the coast.
Mm-hmm.
And they really made me change the way I looked at my business. I am very embarrassed about how I used to look at things in terms of the number of transactions I had. And those numbers, I'm closing out this year, I think, at 30 transactions by the end of December. But that's what I was measuring myself by, how many transactions I was doing, and rather than the sales volume, the top. And they were like, you have to have a different kind of goal set. And so I really looked at the numbers. And I think at the beginning of the year, I made myself a $20 million goal for the end of the year. And so I did. I feel good about it. I also just really, the whole year I was focusing on how I could grow constantly. And I think we talked about this. I read the book, I think it was from a conference, that Never Eat Alone.
Yes, Robert Refkin's favorite, and Mark Noah.
It's such a great book. And I read it right at the beginning of the year when I was doing my business plan. Like, I felt like I don't read a lot of real estate books, and like I don't do these mantras that everybody does, like at the beginning of the day, the ninja training. I've been through that training, and I
haven't, but I've heard about it. Yeah.
You've heard about it. There's a podcast too, and like I'm not that person. So but reading a book at the beginning of my business, like trying to plan my business around it, it seemed like something I could swallow. So he really resonated with me. And I think it's because he's probably a pretty similar, more of a gregarious, outgoing personality, and what you could do with that skill set. But he gave me an idea. He gave me lots of ideas, but the idea I really went with was to connect with the connectors. And I really started out at the beginning of the year, this past year, saying, yes, I'll take your coffee date, or, all the people that call like throughout the week, and just, the lenders or the different people that just want to do business with you in some other regard. They're not going to be your client necessarily. I just started saying yes to those people, especially when they were like not pushy, when they seem like nice people, and there's nothing wrong with meeting them. So I just started saying,
improves the quality of life.
Yeah. And I've got all about the people from those people now. And so I'm really glad I did that, because they're connector type people, and they're connected. My sphere is constantly growing, and I'm glad I did that. And now I try to say yes as much as I can, within, the constraints that we have.
So I've done the opposite. I've said no, but now I've said no to so many things. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, wait a minute.
Well, there's a skill to that too, because like I really did
Yeah.
start by the end of the year, I got, warnings from the people in my personal life that I was working too much, that I needed to start saying no to things that would take me too far afield. So that is another skill set, right? Is
Well,
knowing
then
when
it's never, people are always like, how do I find balance? You don't, I mean, it's a constant, the only way you balance is to constantly move.
it's true.
Same thing in your business. You've got to constantly shift and move to keep the balance of,
Right.
where you're going. And a lot of it is really, what do you want? What keeps you peaceful? What keeps you centered? Because that's what makes you productive.
It's true.
So
We're in
doubling your
sales,
business.
right? We
Yeah,
have
go
to keep
ahead.
moving. We're in sales. I mean, we have to keep moving all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And like, there's no options. Like, there's not much room for failure in or like error in our business. So just to review everybody, because I know everybody's going to want, okay, so how did she double her business? So doubling your business, number one, you talk about accountability, getting people you're accountable to. Number two is shifting your perspective of two things. So one, accountability, grouping up with people who you want to align with and be like. Two, shift your perspective on two things. Number one, you, instead of looking at number of transactions, you looked at volume, not how many deals am I going to do, because then you're saying yes to all the deals and probably the wrong deals, but where am I going to get my volume up, which opened your eyes to new opportunities. And the other half of that new opportunities and new perspective was saying yes and connecting with the connectors, which I love, because I am not good at sales. I mean, I am good at sales. Apparently I've done well so far, but not like the hardcore, straightforward, like pushing somebody to do a deal. I'm all about who needs my help. How do I make sure I'm equipped to do the best job? And how do I make sure they find out about me and come to me?
Right.
Because I do not like going after them. The best way to get somebody to run away from you is to go after them, at least in my world.
That's true. It's like
So
those cartoons you watch with the skunks.
Yeah. So when you have the connectors, those are the people that bring those people to you once you're positioned to deliver on what they need. And then you know which connectors to say yes to. And then that continues to increase your volume and your average sales price and or transactions if you want to do that.
I think that's a really good rendition of it.
Yeah, but I just wanted to repeat that for everybody, because I'm taking notes to like get, two things: accountability perspective. On accountability, align with people that you want to be like. And on the second one, on your perspective, for you, it was focusing on volume, not transactions, and focusing on connecting with the connectors and saying yes to the right things.
Yeah, it's been really helpful to collaborate with people who are also sort of social beings who had, successful businesses, and I've gotten a lot of referrals from that.
And what was your biggest, I'm going to ask you one more question, I'm going to do the final three, but I want to get to into the, it sounds like going through that divorce, you were able to kind of maintain, which is powerful. Yeah. And I think it shows how strong you are. But once you came out of it, it was okay, like enough's enough. Let's get this to the next level. Do you have anything for us of like advice on, or here's this, what was your biggest lesson or your biggest aha or anything you had coming out of that experience getting where you are now?
Well, I think that I learned that mindset really was phenomenally important in this business. And I had sort of poo-pooed that, when you hear all the things about mindset and,
shame on you, Robin.
I know I'm terrible. I've never been much, I don't even know what the term is.
At least you know now.
I do know now. And that was a really big thing to take away. Like, you really, if you're radiating more openness and kindness and gratitude out there, you really can bring in what you're putting out there. And it's so true, and treat everybody equally, because, I just watched, I won't say who it is. I did watch a broker recently, and he didn't know what's behind him in a cafe, really mistreat a person that was making him coffee. And it bothered me so much, because they're working so hard, and you never know, anybody's story. And there's just no reason to ever treat anybody poorly. And you never know if that person, someday they could buy a house, or they could be a dear friend.
Well, he's probably the CEO of Starbucks, just working there for the day. I mean, really, Like I think about that a lot. Like
Yeah.
we're all people anyway. Like I've been
Yeah.
quoting Stephen Shane a lot lately because I had so much fun on our interview. But he talks about it. He's like, you know what? At the end of the day, we're all people.
We are.
We're all people because he deals with such a high net worth client. Like they're still
Hmm.
people. They just need somebody to put themselves in their shoes and empathize. And I mean, that's great practice in whether you're getting your coffee made or whatever. We're all
Hmm.
people, and you don't know. It doesn't matter who anybody is because we are. You don't know who anybody is, but it doesn't matter because it's really we're all people.
Totally agree. And that empathy component is really, really important. I think I used to think I had empathy and still it's really started to explore what that meant, you know? And I think now I can hone it. I can get to that a little more easily.
And it's not as easily said as much as we all think we have it, because I know I've had many times where I lacked it, many, because it's those painful times in life that you go, okay, wait a minute, like everybody's got their story, everybody's got something they're dealing with, and it's not the same as what you are, and just
True.
respect that.
Yeah, you have to really you have to really, really try to remind yourself of that for
And
sure.
then life gets easy and we forget. But don't,
Don't
right?
get complacent.
But we're all people. Um, so last three questions.
Yes.
What is the one tool, whether it's something you do, networking, listing presentation, an app, a CRM, what is your one tool? And your cell phone is not allowed. Other than that, what is your one tool that you couldn't live without as a real
Honestly,
estate?
if I could get rid of the cell phone, I would, because it drives me
Yes.
crazy. I don't know if you've been to Sky Michael's class ever, but the foundations class,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
he
have.
makes you put down your phone and there's like a personal question underneath it. And if you pick up your phone, you have to read the personal question. You have to read the answer to the whole class.
You didn't
Very
do that
effective.
yet. That's
Oh,
smart.
really? Yeah. And it was really
No.
effective because you don't know what's lying underneath your phone. So anyway, I honestly, my phone it's the most powerful thing, but it's also your biggest enemy because it
Yeah, it
takes you
can
away
be.
from like this. I would say Bom Bom is huge, like as a tool. Like I really, like I said, I use that every single day. Like, even if I'm not with my kids and I want to send them a message, I'll use that because it's just so easy to do.
Oh, I'm gonna do that for my kids. I
It's
like
great,
that's gonna
right?
get me using Bom Bom right
Yeah.
there. I love
And it's
it.
nice to, and also just for tours, if you were touring a more substantial home, or frankly, at the end of an inspection, like for example, sometimes my relocation clients aren't present for their inspection. And so I have to do like a FaceTime, or if I
Yeah.
can't, I'll do the Bom Bom of my inspector, telling them what the big ticket items are in that house. And if it's a long walkthrough, your regular computer, your
Can't
regular
save all
phone,
the doesn't have
exactly,
the
you'll have to
data.
use Dropbox or something for it. So
Oh,
it
that's
compresses it really
oh,
effective.
that's great. Yeah.
I really like it. But I also use the insights tool on Compass a lot, like to tell people like how many people viewed your house and where are they coming from, and did they come from social media or they come through the Compass site, and that's been really helpful. And it looks so nice, and it's like it takes a minute to print that out or to put it into a PDF at the end of a day.
Oh,
So
that's
that's a really,
awesome.
really nice tool.
So insights and Bomb Mom. I love real estate agents. I ask them for one and they give me like five
Oh no.
or two.
Always have your
Okay.
things, and then you invest in and then you never use. Like I've got
Yeah.
those too, for sure.
Well, great. What's the book? The one book we have to read.
Well, I
And you
honestly,
mentioned
I
it
haven't
already.
read a ton, but yeah, we mentioned it already. It's Never
Never
Eat
Eat
Alone. I
Alone.
really liked that book.
What's your biggest tip? Well, you gave us, I mean, it's connect with the connectors. Anything else we should take away from that before I ask you the
It's the
final
same thing. It's
question?
just to be open to people. I mean, I had my handyman recently asked me to help him find a house. Like I sold a house to my electrician. Like I try to like treat everybody
You're like
equally.
the
And
natural born realtor. You're like everybody's realtor. I love that.
well, I just like people, and and everyone has a fun story. And I always just feel
Yeah.
like every time I meet someone that they have a potential for being a friend or someone that I could
Yeah.
learn from.
Awesome. All right. Last question. If there's one
Okay.
thing, if we forget everything else from this interview and we can just remember one thing, what would that need to be?
I I think just to be open and to answering the phone when those calls come in, or to meeting new people, or just like you never know. And we've all had those people call us and you think that I don't know, you do them immediately, and suddenly they're like, oh, I've got $2 million to buy this next house or whatever. You just never know. And even if they don't turn out to be a client, they could be a friend, and you're expanding your sphere. So just to be open to.
Well, the world has gifts to offer us. We just need to be willing to receive them.
It does. And even that means just like opening your eyes as you walk down the street and looking people in the eye and just being, a good person.
Kindness goes a long way.
It does.
Awesome. Thank you for a great interview, Robin.
Thank you. This was such a pleasure. I really appreciate it.